Hey everybody, I'm here with my new buddy, Bubba Longgrear, who is from Metter, Georgia. And I met him recently, and he's running for state school superintendent. And for a lot of us, that's like, okay, well, I think it's pretty important because we need our education to be really, vibrant here in the state because it helps us in a lot of ways, right? So Bubba, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Steve. Appreciate you having me on.
You're very welcome. Are you live down in Metter, Georgia, right?
Yes, sir. I'm Southeast Georgia, right on I-16 between Macon and Savannah.
So what's that saying? Everything's better and better or something like that?
That's that's what they tell me. It's pretty good.
Yeah. So you've been the school superintendent down there for how long?
11 years as superintendent.
And that what county is that?
That's Candler County.
Candler County. And
Yes.
then what did you do prior to that? I mean, how'd you end up being in that position?
Yeah, 30 years ago, I started teaching and coaching, football coach, and um, taught high school history for a few years, and then I became an assistant principal for a year, and then became a high school principal, and did that for 7 years. After that, I became a special education director at the central office here in Metter, and did that for 7 years, and then was named superintendent, and I've done that for the last 11.
All right. So, sitting where you are, what do you see? You're running for this office. What do you see needs to be done that's maybe not getting done right now?
A couple years ago, I'm the Georgia School Association, Georgia School Superintendents Association president, and I spent a lot of time at the Capitol working with legislators just on some education related items and so forth. And I just noticed that there wasn't a lot of collaboration between the Department of Education and our legislative body, our senators, our representatives, and um, our superintendent's been in there for 3 terms, the incumbent has, and I just felt that the lack of engagement between those two groups, the DOE working with our legislative body, our senators, so forth, really was hurting our local communities and hurting opportunities for kids. And I feel like that we all have to work together. I mean, public education, K through 12, is about 38% of the state budget, and that's a lot of
It's a lot.
lot of investment, a lot of taxpayer money, and we need to make sure we're maximizing that for opportunities for students and really benefiting our communities and the state as a whole.
So what are some of those things that we need to do to enhance, or what
Yeah.
would you do? What would you do once you're in there differently from the current guy?
Yeah, the legislatures have passed some pretty substantial safety bills. House Bill 268 a couple of years ago, that was kind of on the heels of the Barra County tragedy. Holt Persinger um, chaired that legislation. So we've made some headway there. But a big part to me, Steve, is discipline in the classroom. Some of our districts, maybe due to outside pressure or whatever else, but I feel like we've compromised the expectations that we have for students in terms of what are we allowing them to do? Is it interfering with the learning of others? And also, I think just as importantly, is it causing our teachers to not want to be in the profession because of the discipline problems that they're dealing with and they feel like they're not supported on? I would really want to take a strong stance on this is the way students are to behave. If there's a consistent negligence in doing that, we need to find another area for them, but not disrupting the traditional classrooms.
So what would you do with him? I mean, so you're talking about a disruptive kid. What do you do with him?
There's alternative school options. There's learning from home options. And some of those might be deemed not to be the best option for that individual child, but I think about the other 24 in that classroom, and I think about the teachers and so many teachers leaving the profession in the first 5 years of their career, and it's just hurting the system overall.
So all right, what about standardized testing and stuff like that? Making sure you pass and all that. Where do you
Uh,
stand on that?
I feel that we've put too much of an emphasis on standardized testing, and I think all are for accountability, but some of the things we're asking our young kids to do, third, fourth, and fifth grade, are a little bit unreasonable, and I think it takes away from some of the foundational literacy and numeracy skills that are so important. We're asking kids in third grade to take a multiple choice assessment on a Chromebook in order to determine the type of reader they are. I think adults listening to kids read, documenting that, and focusing on areas they're negligent is a much better practice than an 8-year-old spending 2 hours on a Chromebook answering multiple choice questions in the name of accountability.
Yeah. All right. What about vocational schools or college prep stuff? What about that?
Great question, and I think it's so relevant and pertinent. But about 25 years ago or so, there was a shift where everybody needed to go to college. You know, you had to go to college to be successful. But the reality is, by putting such an emphasis on that, there's still a place for those high achieving academic students to go to college, but we've neglected a lot of our vocational skills. Students that can come right out of high school, partnering with technical schools, going into the military, whatever that might be. So I think that there needs to be a major shift back, and I feel like that pendulum's swinging that way, but there's so much more we can do to focus on making sure not only students graduate, but they're really prepared for life beyond graduation. And it doesn't always entail going to a university.
So how does that play into economic development, especially in rural areas where, like Metter would love to have a big plant come down there and stuff, and maybe they look at it and say, hey, is there, is the workforce qualified? How do we make that all work so that other parts outside of Atlanta are doing well?
Yeah, I think that's super important. You know, Southeast Georgia here where I am has experienced some growth and a lot of that being triggered by the Hyundai plant right there on I-16, a huge manufacturing facility for automobiles. We have actually received two tier one providers here and that, two different companies that provide to Hyundai directly. One is a seat manufacturer, and the other is an air conditioning component piece that provides to Hyundai, and they have to be within that 60-mile radius. So we're experiencing some of that economic growth, but as a school system, we need to make sure that our kids are not only prepared from a technical standpoint, but also from an ideology standpoint that when I graduate from high school or graduate from technical school, that career is a good thing. We need to produce contributors to society and kind of fight against some of the idea that, a certain percentage of our community might not work and, just be on the government dependency.
All right. What about charter schools?
Charter schools, there's a lot of different names with that. You have your college and career academy type charter school, which focuses on the career development. Your charter school that could be locally approved by a local board of education, and there's state approved charter schools. And then there's charter systems, so it gets confusing. But from your standpoint specifically, are you thinking of local approved or state approved charter schools that might provide a focus
I'm
area?
thinking about it from alternative choices. For
Yeah.
me, I just think parents need to have choices. And around here in the Alpharetta area, you've got a couple of charter schools, and they're kind of specific, I think. But
Yeah.
I just wonder if that's something that we need more of, in your opinion, or less of, or it's a good thing or bad thing, or.
I do think choice is a good thing, and I look at some of our larger metro areas that have, you know, designated some charter schools, some magnet schools, if you will, that really hone in on what interests the students have. And I think with that clear focus, they're more productive oftentimes. And another key to that, Steve, goes back to what I was talking about earlier. Within those schools, they have a higher expectation for behavior, and it's a privilege to go there.
Right. You
So
can get kicked out, right?
yeah, you can lose that privilege. So there's
Right.
some motivation. I think that we need to take that concept and apply it to all of our schools, including the traditional school. It's a privilege to go here. We're going to provide these innovative opportunities for you, but there's still room for charter schools and expanding those and finding out ways that really interest students and meet the needs that the local community has or the children that go there have.
Mm-hmm. All right. I love the voucher thing, and I don't think you and I are necessarily on the same page, but
Yeah.
what's your opinion on vouchers?
Yeah, right now we talk about school choice, and there's been some legislation passed, one that targeted students with disabilities, another that targeted students that are in those districts that are on the bottom 25% of the performing. So it's limited into who has access to it. My key thing is that with vouchers, I would want it to transition more to parent choice. Whereas if there's two kids sitting in a classroom, one kid might have a good home life, might have some financial means. The private school or the receiving school says, I'll take that child. Well, if this child's beside him that needs an opportunity, I want it to be parent choice where the parents of this child could say, you know what, I want to go and experience that as well. Right now, there's a lot of limitations into who can be accepted. I would want to expand it in that sense.
Yeah, so maybe the private school has to open up their acceptance in order to receive those voucher dollars, maybe something like that. That's
I
not
think if we're truly wanting to serve students and give all students an opportunity, that's important. In this role that I'm running for, Steve, the number one priority is how can we make public education, which is the only choice available to all, the best opportunity. And there's areas where we're not doing a great job of that. We need to get better.
all right. What about sports, GHSA and stuff like that? Do you have any? Are you part of that? If you're the state school superintendent?
The state school superintendent is an ex officio member of that board. So there's input and insight into that. And I know that there's oftentimes frustration with things that are impacted by the GHSA. And it's a tough monitoring piece. But I would have input. Tim Scott, who's the executive director there, Robin Hines was the executive director. Both of those are colleagues and friends of mine. So I would be very much participatory in trying to help, support, advise in terms of how can we make sure we're serving each of these communities that have different needs and interests.
I would think you'd be a great addition to that, having played sports and stuff. You got a little background in that.
Yeah.
I often
Coached
wonder,
and
like, there's a Buford City Schools up here. They just built this huge stadium and everything, and I'm hearing that they can bring people into that city school that actually don't live in the city. How do they do that? Do you know anything about that?
absolutely. You know, the way GHSA rules read, any student that enters the ninth grade in a high school can go to any high school and be eligible that they want to in the state of Georgia. Once they start a high school, then there has to be a bona fide move. So if a kid from started at Alpharetta High School his ninth grade year, his family would have to actually move to Buford City Schools to be eligible. If he was in Alpharetta at the end of his eighth grade year, if he said, I want to go to Buford High School, he could transfer from a middle school in Alpharetta, start Buford High School, and be eligible immediately if he never starts anywhere else.
And he doesn't have to live in the city.
Does not have to live in the city.
Ah, that's cool. That's cool. All right. When this so we're in the runoff with is it Richard Wood is the guy, the
Yeah,
current guy?
yeah, he's the
And
incumbent.
yeah, and so the runoff is when June.
The big election date's June 16th. Early voting starts June 8th and runs through June 12th. Um,
Oh,
Voter
okay.
turnout was relatively low in the primary, and the anticipation is it will even drop off, even with the governor's race, lieutenant governor's runoff, and so forth. But that is June 8th through 12th, with the big day being June 16th.
All right. So how can folks help you if they want to? I mean, do you need people to help you with contributions for marketing? Do you need speaking engagements? What's the
Yeah.
best way for folks to help you?
Yeah, the best thing they can do, my website, they can learn more about me, see my background, see some of the things that I've been a part of, is Bubba, the number four, GA.com. BUBBA, the number four, GA.com. They can donate financially on there. Financial contributions will be pivotal in terms of getting information out to the mass of voters. And we did a ton of that during the primary, and we were able to get to a runoff. Speaking engagements, I'm going to be up in a lot of areas. My schedule's so tight. I'm going to be up in Cobb County next week, couple of days. I'm going to be actually have an event up in Ringo. Later, I'll be in North Fulton. Um, just set that one up. I'm not even exactly sure where, but there's a debate coming up Monday at Georgia Public Broadcasting Monday morning. That will be aired with me and the incumbent in that debate. So um, I'd love for people to get them a website, spread that around, and then just encourage people to look at the two candidates and vote for who they feel is best.
The last question. So you were a football coach. How did you do as a football coach? Because you're not a football coach anymore. So I'm wondering about that.
Well, I was a very young head football coach at 20, named, I think, at 25 years old. I
Wow.
did that for 3 years, and I tell the story that I don't think I won enough games to continue to be the football coach. They didn't want me to leave the district, so they named me the high school principal at 28. So the Lord worked it out. It was better for my career. I didn't know it at the time, but it was a blessing in disguise.
All right, Bubba, we appreciate you coming on and spreading a little bit about what's going on. Hey, everybody, get out there and vote and go to Bubba's website. If you got any questions, I'm sure he'd be happy to take your phone call and talk to you about it. So, hey, Bubba, good luck, man. I hope it works out for you, man.
Man, appreciate you a ton, Steve. Thank you,
All right.
bud. Have a
All
great one.
right.
All right, bye.